I think this movie deserves an award for giving a character the worst haircut in all of existence. Tetsuo's hair is so bad. He simultaneously has so much hair and is also bald. It's scary to look at.
He has a lot of forehead, if I'm remembering correctly.
So much forehead. Forehead for days. The forehead fetish gang was eating in this movie.
If one of our audience members is a member of that gang, shoot us an email.
And Jeffrey will send you a picture of his forehead, hair pulled back and everything. Whoa, don't, you gotta tease, if you do it now, they're not gonna email us. You gotta tease them.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Dodge this.
Hello, and welcome to the Holy Moment Podcast, where we watch movies with you, yes, you, and discuss the things that work, the things that don't, and the things that reflect truth in unexpected ways. I'm joined today by my lovely co-hosts, Nathaniel and Christopher. Say hello, Nathaniel and Christopher.
Konnichiwa. Misu gon ikidakimasu. Si. That's my 2 days of Duolingo. That's how far I got with Japanese before I gave up.
Yes. Boku wa ringo desu. Yeah, that was my 1 year of Japanese class in high school. Vega, you haven't spoken Japanese yet.
Being the Japanese guy in the chat, you have a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough. I think Arden Jensen would be very disappointed in me. But hi, I'm Christopher. Don't know Japanese. Not like that. Nearly flunked that class my final semester of college.
Oh, you did take Japanese, didn't you?
Yeah, yep. Jeffrey was my roommate, canonically. Forgot.
I thought you were taking, we know someone that took Russian.
Jacob took Russian.
That was not your roommate. That wasn't your roommate. Hashtag stop Asian hate.
Yeah, isn't that what this movie is really about? Stopping Asian hate.
I don't know what this movie was about, but
frankly, I had some questions at the end myself. But yeah, that brings us to today's movie now, doesn't it? We watched the movie Akira, which is a Japanese film, animated film, that was made in 1988, that's when it came out, based on a manga of the same name, written and directed by the same people. And that person was, hold on, let me bring out the stats for you. Katsuhiro Otomo, produced by Ryohei Suzuki. Mitsuo Uwata voiced Shotaro Kaneda. It's kind of funny that we have a Japanese man named Kaneda. I took note of it. Nozomu Sasa. Goodness gracious! Took a year of Japanese. You'd think I'm
not jealous of you for having whenever. That's always my biggest bane. Whenever I have to host an episode, it means I have to remember actor and actresses' names, and especially in a different language, it's so hard. So my heart goes out to you, Jeffrey.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you. I'll take your heart. It's already mine. Nozomu Sasaki was Tetsuo. Mami Koyama was Kei. Taro Ishida was Colonel Shikishima. And those are the ones that sort of get the screen time. As far as the English dubs, there's two. I'll just list them off. Kaneda, Cam Clark and Johnny Young Bosch. Tetsuo, Jan Rabson, Joshua Seth. Kei, Laura Cody and Wendy Lee. Colonel Shikishima is Tony Pope and Jameson Price. Ryu, Steve Kramer, Bob Buchholz. Doctor, Louis Arquette and Simon Prescott. And there we go.
There's two different dubs. I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's one that came out in the 80s when the movie initially released, and a remastered version that came out in 2001.
Oh, well, I have a little bit of a secret I must share, unfortunately. Being an Asian and being someone who really likes anime, I do not think subtitles is superior to dub, but I do like them more often than not. But unfortunately, I had to watch this dubbed because my roommate owned it on DVD, but our speaker is super stupid and won't do 5.1 surround sound. It can only do the lesser version. And for some reason on the DVD, the Japanese was in 5.1 surround sound, but not the English dub. So we watched it in English dub, and I was very sad. That's my sad, shameful story.
I'm really happy that you brought that up, though, because that was going to be my first question, is subbed or dubbed?
Good old subbed. Yeah, how did you watch it, Vega?
I watched for all of you wonderful, wonderful people at home. I watched this stuff on YouTube.com. I was not gonna start a Crunchyroll um, free trial, so I watched this in English as God intended.
Oh, very good. Yeah, it was funny. Right before the podcast started, I wanted to look up a specific scene to like refresh my memory, and I looked up Akira, and there it was, the whole thing on YouTube for free.
I almost went that route, but I went ahead and got the free 7-day trial of Crunchyroll
Better
and
man than
watched
me.
the subbed.
So here it is, the white man being better than the Japanese man. I think that just makes Jeffrey a true weeb.
Listen, guys, I took a class in high school on Japanese. You cannot. I don't think I can defend myself against that accusation.
Me and Vega can watch anime all we want. You know, it's not weird for us to watch hentai. You know, we're Asian. Jeffrey, you're a weeb if you watch that stuff.
Oh, I'm allowed to when I'm watching it with y'all.
Yeah, those group hentai sessions when we watch it all together. Yeah, that's how we bonded in college.
Yeah. And I always feel very honored that y'all would let me into that space.
I think my favorite part of this is the use of the word honor.
I was about to say, as you know, Japanese is a very honor-driven culture.
Yeah, just to clear the record, if there ever been any of these sessions that they're talking about, I was not there. It's fake. It's fraudulent. That's that ain't me.
Yeah, I mean, typically I prefer subbed over dubbed, but I don't have any principled like reason against dubs. I just prefer seeing the original vision.
Yeah, for me, it just has to do if I'm feeling lazy or not. It just has to do with like, is it kind of on in the background, or am I like locked in and watching it? So if I'm locked in and watching
I will say it was a bit of a hassle reading the subtitles during certain points because a lot said in a short amount of time and a lot of it's more technical jargon. So
I think it's for the best you watch it that way. I wouldn't say the dubbed was bad, but I wouldn't say it was good. Some characters were solid. Some characters were like, yep, that was pretty good. Don't have an issue. Some were bad. I will say it's such a shame. I'm going to refer to him as the Colonel because unlike Jeffrey's absolutely fluent Japanese, I am not. So the Colonel, I really liked his character, but he had the goofiest dub voice. And the whole movie, he was just going, "Arrgh!" Like he was just like grumbling the entire movie. It was kind of a shame.
Well, okay, that brings me to my next point. Is like the characters. You said you really resonated with the Colonel. I agree. The Colonel was up there for me as far as characters go. Very interesting. Not what I was expecting, I think, from his introduction. And I think this movie does that several times where it introduces a character that might be a villain and then shows a good side of him. Or it shows us a character that we think is going to be the hero, and then we see them doing very shady things. It's very interesting because everyone in this movie is kind of shitty in their own ways and redeemable in other ways.
I mean, something I like about the movie, like you were saying, is I don't know if realistic is the correct word. I think with the last 2 weeks, we watched two of Vegas picks, Come On, and After Sun, and we really were praising it for the authentic performance and the writing that feels so like authentic and real and personable, blah, blah, blah. All great things. I wouldn't say these characters were authentic or very like relatable. And in some regards they are. But I will say is I liked that they were multifaceted and they were three-dimensional characters. And when you say they all had their shittiness and they all had their goodness in them, I like that because no one felt like a good guy and no one felt like a bad guy beside Tetsuo. Bad guy, I kind of think. But I think all the characters they were just three-dimensional characters. They were doing things sometimes for the right reason, but they were doing really bad things. Or they were doing kind of good things, but for the wrong reason. It just made the whole city feel alive and just like an absolute cesspool, but in a realistic way.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing about Tetsuo, too, because what he was doing was undeniably bad. But I also got the sense that his mind was being messed with by this amount of power that he did not ask for, and that it was changing him. Like, his friends ask him, hey, is this Tetsuo? Is this who we have known all our lives and have become friends with? And
yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on Tetsuo's character. some of the it was weird. His part of his character was kind of the highlight and the holy moment for me, and then part of it was honestly the worst part of the movie. So I don't know if you want to jump into that yet. If you want to, I'll give you my thoughts, but I didn't know if you had other questions you wanted to lead with the opening.
Well, I wanted to hear Vega's thoughts on the
What?
characters.
That was not one of the options. Boo.
Yeah, that's not one of the options. You think I understood what happened in this movie, even remotely, without having to watch a YouTube video? Think again.
You think Vega understands movies that aren't like art house indie films? He did, right over his head.
Not art house indie hit films. This was the most like I felt okay. Brushing Jeffrey's question of characters aside for a moment. What happened? I cough and I blink and I go to grab my water, and then I feels like I was just like screamed 7 interesting plot points and then 3 things that are like, oh, okay, here's like new things that we're doing with the story. It felt like a snowball, or like what's like, yeah, snowball effect, or like I don't think I'm speaking more towards the beginning of the movie, just the entire movie. It felt like, what are we doing? And then it kept on doing more, so it was a little bit hard to keep track of.
I fully agree, and that's probably one of my biggest gripes with the movie. A lot of cool concepts, so much happened, and it was just moving at a million miles an hour, and just not only was it moving fast, it was just like picking up storylines. Like, hey, here's a new storyline. Oh, okay, we're gonna go over here. Here's a new storyline. Oh, we're gonna go over here, and it never like fully weave them together. So I think it left you with a lot of questions.
Like I just don't know if, I guess, to actually slightly just touch on the characters thing. Was there like, would a rewatch help? Yes, but I genuinely was kind of just a bit confused. Maybe it's because I didn't give this much time or maybe as much time as I should have. Maybe it was just a lot going on. But like, I just don't know if I mean, outside of like blatantly bad characters, I just don't know if I have something super substantial to say. I think there were some characters who were kind of cool, or at least how they talked was cool, or how they like were portrayed. Forgive my everything for taking a Japanese class and maybe butchering pronunciation. Kai.
Kai.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we got both. We got both as an option apparently.
Don't pick me. It's not whatever I say. It's the opposite.
I think that was a she. She was cool. That's all I got. I don't know. I just like I should have maybe taken better notes. I should have. It just was so. What's going on?
She's actually one of the characters I have the most questions about, though, because at the end of the day, we don't know what her relationship with was Ryu, who seemed like a father figure of sorts. We didn't know why she was working with that group that was opposing the government, but also working for a corrupt politician. And yeah, a lot of threads that weren't tied by the end of it. But in her case, like, why was she significant to the Espers, to the wrinkly babies?
Wrinkly babies.
They saw her, and they're like, "Oh, she's important. We need her for our plans." And there was really no indication to me as to why she, in particular, was what they needed.
Maybe it might. I know we don't do it with every movie, but for a movie that all 3 of us are kind of coming out of the gate being like, nah, I don't really know what happened. It might be to our audience at home, who we love very much. It might be to their benefit if we try and give them some type of summary of this film, so they can have something to grasp upon.
Absolutely. I meant to read that out after the logistics facts, but synopsis. In 1988, the Japanese government drops an atomic bomb on Tokyo after ESP experiments on children go awry. ESP is like psychic, telekinetic things. In 2019, 31 years after the nuking of the city, Kaneda, a bike gang leader, tries to save his friend Tetsuo from a secret government project. He battles anti-government activists, greedy politicians, irresponsible scientists, and a powerful military leader until Tetsuo's supernatural powers suddenly manifest. A final battle is fought in Tokyo Olympiad, exposing the experiment's secrets. I think a big thing to note is that Tetsuo is taken by the government, experimented on, and then he receives powers beyond his wildest imaginings that also do a great deal of damage on his psyche, which is not built to contain so much power.
After that summary, I have just left with another question. Did the sub, because I listened to dub, did the sub pronounce his name Kaneda?
Kaneda.
Huh. Okay. Because in the dub, which is obviously, the dub is pronouncing things incorrectly, I'm sure, but it was Kaneda.
See, the thing is, I say Canada, in sort of a facetious, joking way. Sometimes they would put the emphasis on Kaneda, but at the end of the day, Kaneda.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is we're all going to pronounce his name differently, which I'm all for.
I think we should all just use the country's name.
Canada.
Says the
Canada.
white man of the group. We should do what's easier.
Hey, listen, guys. I've got 1/16 Choctaw on me.
That's right. Keep reminding the audience at home.
Yeah, so that's the synopsis of it. I think that the beginning, it does a good job of giving you questions that you're really curious to know the answers to, and that keeps you engaged. And then once you get to the end, you realize, oh, none of those questions are going to be given a satisfactory answer. Like, we see the withered gray child, and immediately I'm like, who's he? He looks strange. What's he doing with that man who's running away with him? Why is the government chasing him, right? And then we figure out, oh, he has ESP, he has telekinetic powers. And then we're like, okay, these people that are trying to rescue him, they must be anti-government revolutionaries that want to bring justice to the city. But then we find out, oh, they're being paid by a politician that wants dirt on his political enemies so that he can gain the upper hand. It's like, well...
My favorite part about that whole plot thread was the government was like, someone's leaking our information. There must be a mole in here. Well, guess what? You want to know what the guy looked like who was leaking in information? A literal mole. He looked like the human representation of a mole. Everyone else looks normal. No one else. It's not like a JoJo universe. Well, it is like a JoJo universe where, like, who could the bad guy be? A bunch of normal human beings, and then someone who's like 8 foot tall with pink hair wearing like spandex. Just saying, government, maybe you deserve to be overthrown. This government in the movie, I'm not talking or taking a stance on our political government.
Well, I mean, cool thing is the government does get overthrown by like a military coup at the end.
That was very poggers.
Well, I don't know if poggers is the word.
I think it is.
Yeah, you telling me that overthrowing the government with military coups isn't pretty neat, pretty rad?
All right, I guess it is just a little poggers.
There we go. I'm going to get everyone to start saying that word.
Nothing's going to stop him.
Yeah, but like that's one of the things that adds some shadiness to the Colonel's character, right? Because he means well for the city, but also he takes absolute control over the government in order to realize his ends, which in a way he's justified in doing, but also, I don't know, there's some moral ambiguity there.
I really like the Colonel's character. He probably was my, I don't know about favorite, but he probably was the character with the most clear motivation the entire film. It wasn't confusing as all heck, but that's not the only reason. I thought the Colonel was presented in almost a very stereotypical, I'm a big brute who is going to fight for his country no matter what, and at the end of the day, he's really just power hungry and overthrows the government. That's almost what the Colonel was. But there were like moments where the Colonel's like soft side shone through for the city, for the little zombie babies. I just want to see how many different words and like names we can come up for these ugly ass little kids. These little raisin babies. But he shows like genuine care for them. He's kind of like been in the military and taken care of them for his whole career. They're even older than him because even though they look like little raisin babies, they're like 90 years old. But to put it all in perspective, what I think about the commander's character, because I don't think he's like the most deep, well-written character, but he is I will say, flip on maybe the stereotypical kind of I'm a big brute, strong commander that's going to take over with military power. I liked that the commander genuinely felt like he wanted what was best for the city. I think often with colonel type characters, they say they want what's best for the city, but it's very obvious underneath they really just want the power and they're willing to do whatever they want to do. But I feel like the colonel really had a soft spot, cared about the civilians, knew that the city was rotten from the inside out, but still cared for the people and wanted to change it. So I think those nuances shone through and made him a little more interesting than like a boring, I have power, I will kill you.
No, I agree 100%. I know how he's introduced was with like very intense shadows on his face that seemed to imply sinister, but perhaps he's the least sinister character in the movie.
I'm really happy he lived. I thought like 0% chance that man lived, especially when the flesh monster tried to eat him twice. but he got another reason he's a good person. You know who saved him? The little raisin babies. Like the little girl. Like I guess there's what, 3 of them in the movie. There's the little boy who has like the telekinesis power. There's the girl who can kind of like mind control people or like can like psychically talk through other people. And then there's the boy in the wheelchair who has the power of rolling around in a wheelchair.
Looks like Donald Trump.
Yeah, he does look like Donald Trump. But the point of the story is the girl that can kind of teleport around and like telekinesically put her like mind in someone else's body. Right before they're all swallowed up in the big void, she teleports the commander away because the commander had like treated the kids well. So I think that's just a nice facet of his character. He one of the only people to do a nice thing in the movie. He gets saved.
Yeah, 100%. Vega, do you have any thoughts?
A little bit before we started talking about Akira, or maybe it was earlier today, I was talking to Nathaniel about how I watched Gladiator 2 and how after watching that, it gave me such a greater appreciation for the first one, which I didn't really quite vibe with, maybe it wasn't something that was made for me. Maybe I just wasn't ready for it. But then after watching 2, it was just like clicked. I think they need to make an Akira 2.
Hear me out though. What if you go watch Akira the live action?
Is there such a thing?
I'm 90% sure.
I know, I heard
That
it was
100% plays into a question I have. Sorry, Vega, what were you saying?
Oh, and that relates to the question that you have, and that, once again, circling back to it, sorry if there was a podcast listener who was just like, I'm biting, I am clawing away, desperate to know what Vega has to think about this episode. Vega has to think about this movie. I ain't got none. I have a few things, but like, I don't know. There's just so much that I think I should rewatch it and then rewatch it again and then rewatch it again. So I do not have a good answer for this.
Well, that's fair. But it's so interesting that not Vega, Nathaniel, you would joke about live action because it plays into a question I was going to ask y'all. This movie, I thought, story, character aside, was visually stunning.
Oh my God. Sorry. I'm with you on that one. This was like, I think it exceeded the, sorry to completely interrupt. I think it exceeded the, for whenever it was made, the typical use of amount of frames, of amount of frames within a second. In other animated movies, because I think it beat whatever, it exceeded whatever Ghibli was doing at the time. So it was like there was some where it went from like 12 to 16 to like 24 frames a second in animation, which is at the time I don't think it wasn't super practiced. So that made some of the. Sorry if this is stealing thunder or this is what you were about to say, but it just
No, not at
provided
all.
for such like a more beautiful, fluid like at times animation that was just kind of like if maybe the plot is something that I should have grabbed onto, then I beg for everyone's forgiveness. But if nothing else, this film was like at times like really beautiful. Like it was like just like kind of outstanding to look at some of the things that were going on. Or some of the like it was a really great work of animation.
I'm curious. You were saying how this movie, certain scenes would have more frames per second than other like movies like Ghibli at the time. Do you know what it got up to? Like exceeded 24?
I think I'm just saying. I think it got to 24, which I don't think at the time was like a super normal thing for like that's like shelling out money to have animators do 24 frames for just 1 second, and this is like a 2-hour and change movie.
All hand drawn. There's no computer assistance at all. A bunch of really talented artists just working their asses off.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
Yeah, like just everything from the colors and the compositions and the details in the backgrounds and the vehicles. And I think the artist did a great job of giving the city scale and character.
Not to pull it back for 0.2 seconds, but guess how many hand-drawn frames were in the movie? I just looked it up.
3.
This is not correct.
At
Jeffrey.
least 3.
That is correct. There was $160,000 drawn frames. So 160,000 pieces of art to make this movie. And like you were saying, Jeffrey, just right there, like you feel it in the city. You like it's so alive and I don't even want to say vibrant, just kind of gross.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think it played a huge part in my enjoyment and investment in the film. If you had given me the same script, the same characters, but you didn't have the accompanying art and the original vision, I don't know. It already we have our issues with the story. I really like this movie, but again, it's because the art made me want to believe in this space, this like the politics, the world, the people. It felt very lived in.
Hear me out. Do you think there's any validity to what I'm about to say, or am I crazy? Yes, I know this is a set in the dystopian future, so technology and all that's kind of in the future.
2019.
20, yeah, the dystopian future of 2019. Yep. But you know what this city kind of gave me the vibe of? It gave me the vibe of Fallen Angels. And maybe that's just because it was like Japanese inspired and took place predominantly at night. But I feel like kind of when we talked about Fallen Angels, we talked a lot about how the city played into the story and how it kind of had this underbelly of crime and grizzle and just kind of grossness to it. And I definitely think it's just interesting that I mean, it could be a whole, not even podcast. You could just have a whole like college lecture about the idea of how the bomb, how World War II affected Japanese culture so drastically, even to the point of their cinema and their films and their animation. I just feel like so often you have these really grizzled depictions of Japanese life. Sometimes directly, I mean, it's just the first movie we did was Grave of the Fireflies, during kind of World War II, and then we have this movie, kind of the idea of like World War II and then World War III. So it's just like a lot of films based around World War, but even movies that aren't based around World War, I still feel like you can hear the echoes of what the dropping of the bombs did and the war and kind of how that's etched into their stories, which is just so fascinating as a culture.
100%. Yeah. And you're so right about like the visual comparison between this movie and Fallen Angel, just the presence of neon and neon lights and dark nights and grungy punk feeling city. I think that there were things that this movie was able to accomplish with its setting that could not have been done in exactly the same way in live action, right? If they were just capturing this with a camera, or even if it was CGI. And that's what my question was. I did a lot of setup, but do you think that this movie could have been done as well or better in live action? Or do you think that this needed to be what it was?
It's an interesting question because I feel like we're always going to predominantly answer, oh, it was live action. It doesn't really need to be animation. Or hey, vice versa. It was animation. It doesn't really need to be made into live action. It's a big debate nowadays, especially with all the Disney remakes. Lion King 2, I think, is coming out soon or something like that. But the point is the argument of, or no, How to Train Your Dragon. That's what I was thinking of. How to Train Your Dragon comes out before too much longer. But just the argument of what is the purpose of readapting a film into a different medium, being specifically live action or action. And that's a whole discussion. But I will just say specifically for this movie, I think it works best in animation for a few reasons. And I want to say, honestly, the main reason is kind of that final scene, which we'll talk about later. But when Tetsuo is fully overtaken by the power and the insanity and kind of that calling from Akira, and he just explodes and divulges into the flesh monster that he is. And I just think that would have been so lackluster, even if they had the biggest budget and done it to great precision, whether it was with CGI or practical effects. I will say, what would have been cool? The only practical effect, I don't watch a lot of horror movies. I'm sure if you watch more horror movies, you have a better barrel of examples to pull from. But you know what example kind of goes hard if they redid Akira like this? The Thing. The practical effects in The Thing kind of give that flesh-like monster vibe like Akira did. But the point I'm trying to say is, I think when things are adapted from live action to action or vice versa, there has to be something that changes. I don't think there is enough merit besides cash grab, which, say what you want about that. There's not enough purpose or reason behind the art to just take a movie and do it note for note live action. I think there has to be something done differently with the story and the visuals. So maybe there's a very different story kind of in Akira that could be repurposed to live action that I wouldn't be upset about. But if they're trying to do a close one for one recreation, then no, I think 2D it kind of mastered the visuals, not the story, but the visuals.
I agree 100%. Vega, do you have any thoughts?
I've only seen a frame, like quite literally just one frame of what I think was the live action version of Akira. And that was really not worth saying because I don't have anything else to say about it more than that. But I don't think it could have. Maybe it could have, but I think in a similar sense to. Was it our first episode? Was Grave with the Fireflies our first episode of the season?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in a really similar sense to that, how like there's not a maybe there's not a maybe there's some things that are just so much better told and so much better shown through, in this case, some level of drawn animation, or just I guess all the way from a pencil to paper to a cool techie pen to a Wacom tablet or an Apple Pencil to an iPad kind of animation. I just don't know if I think it just there's something really unique that you can do in a space that we do understand as like, oh, they're people. These are like characters. These are things. These aren't like abstract concepts. But it just isn't like, I don't know if it always would translate. I don't know if there's like this special breath of life put into something that is so. It's not quite like another. It's not quite a different kind of humanity, but it's like there's a certain level of like things that just maybe work better as live action. I think some things that maybe just there's a special spirit, something like some little like fire to keep and hold with some animated projects. I would hold that for Grave of the Fireflies, and I think I would hold it for this one as well. As much as I didn't really get it, as much as I probably will have to watch however many YouTube videos to for it to click better, for the story to kind of come across more, and for me to realize how perhaps really stupid I am to not get what was going on. I still think, even all plot aside, I think most of plot aside from her, I don't think that, at least specifically Akira, could have worked in a different way. And maybe if I watch the live action, if it has come out, then I'll be proven wrong. But I don't know. If I guess I'm an at-large thing. I don't know how I feel about it. Not super great all the time, but also not completely closed off. But sometimes it just might be a mindless cash grab.
I want to build off what you said, Vega, because I agree with all of it. I want to say specifically for me to kind of give some more, a little more detail to, I think a lot of times people will say, oh, you can't recapture that. And this is not a jab at all what you were saying, Vega, or anything like that. It's just like people will say, oh, you can't recapture that magic that animation brings, or yada, yada. And that's 100% true. But I when you were talking, Vega, it got me thinking, I want to give just some a little detail for our audience so you guys have a little more to go on. I'm not going to give you a whole lecture on camera lenses because A, that would take a lot of time, and B, Vega could do it infinitely better than I could. But what I'm trying to get across is the cinematography of a live action movie I'm talking about specifically. Not to sound too douchey, but when you make a movie, it's like painting. The colors you choose, the type of art you choose, whether it's oil-based painting, whether it's water-based painting, whether it's crayons, whether it's, markers, the type of brushes you use, the type of style you use, it creates a different type of painting. 1 million people could paint a lily pad, and you get 1 million different types of lily pads. So the point is, a cinematographer with a live action movie, the lenses they choose is like you could shoot someone sitting in a room and do it with different lenses, with different camera angles and different lighting, and it's going to provoke a different mood and tone every single time. Okay, bear with me. The point I'm trying to make is, with animation, 9 times out of 10, you have the ability to manipulate the way we perceive the world in ways we could never do with live action. Maybe we can start to barely get there through CGI, but guess what? At that point, it's just fancy animation. So what's the point? But the point is, I think we often think of action. Action and animation very often poorly translate to action in real life or live action because I think we're painting with a different set of tools. Like Vega was talking about earlier, you can literally, and you can play with the frame rates with live action stuff too, but you could just like distort human bodies and the ways they move, with the weapons they use, with the magic they use, way more than you could ever do in real life. The way we show rain falling could be a way that cameras could never capture it, but we can draw it that way. So I think one of the reasons that not often animated movies can be done in live action, and if they can be, they shouldn't be a one for one, is because the tool sets we have with animation and the lenses in which we can warp the world through animation is just night and day with how we can change our perspective with like a real camera lens and a real light. So, and I think that's like the wonder of animation. I'm not crapping on animation that's more real life, like stuff like, I don't know, Pixar, or like for example, just small tangent, How to Train Your Dragon. It was one of the first movies that had realistic lighting. Roger Deakins came in and he's like a super famous cinematographer, and he was like, "Hey, if we were to light this scene in real life, we would do it this way." And they told the animators that way, and they worked with the animators and they lit it very realistically. That's great. I don't have an issue with that. But look at like the new Spider-Man Into the Introverse. That doesn't adhere to any real cinematography when it comes to like practical live action. So I just think animation is such a great medium for pushing the bounds with how we perceive the world, and then to dilute that into how we actually perceive the world through a camera seems just like an injustice.
You just very beautifully put the very point that I was actually about to talk about.
Oh,
Thank you so
sorry.
much for talking on. No, don't apologize. Thank you for sharing your perspective, and you voiced it in a very unique and insightful way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's the cool thing about animation is with a camera, you can put on different lenses that will distort, how you see the final image, and it will affect perspective in different ways. But at the end of the day, the image you are capturing is of a real object. Whereas in animation, you don't just have to bend and distort reality. You're basically breaking it, right? You can have a perspective that you could not capture on camera, because if such a perspective were captured on camera, that would mean that just the laws of physics as we know it would not be what they are. And that's incredible. It's magical. And it's so unique. Medium specificity, that's a term that we learned about in film school, wasn't it?
Yes.
About the strengths that certain mediums can do that others can't. And that when you're making art in a certain medium, you want to play to that medium's strengths.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, just simply put, going from animation to live action, you diminish the strengths of, anime. Like imagine, like for our audience, I know maybe a lot of you don't watch anime, but I'm sure most people have watched Spider-Man Into the Introverse because everyone in the world has seen that movie. Imagine trying to make that live action. What would the point of that be? That just would like the medium that is animation, which makes it excel for its crazy animation and the shifts in animation, would absolutely be lost. Like, could you do cool, unique things in live action to the idea of replicating the animation? Yes, but it still would just be lost, and it just wouldn't make any sense to do.
And you know what's really sad? I think a lot of studio execs, I think a lot of CEOs, people that are in charge of the people that are most concerned with like making the money from art. Well, I think there's just general sense that live action is a more legitimate form of art than animation, a more legitimate form of film. And that's why we have so many live action adaptations of 2D products. It's like, oh, isn't it cool that this movie that you know and love is going to be a real movie now?
There's also a tonal shift in marketing, like with things like The Lion King and the new How to Train Your Dragon live action. I like obviously they're still geared toward children, but I feel like you can feel the tonal shift of like, hey, we took like the animated movie your kid loves and we made it for adults because now it's live action. So there is also a discredit of like animated films and TV shows are only for children, and in the West specifically. And I think watching Akira proves everything but that, because that movie was not made for kids. Unless you're like a little raisin zombie baby, then maybe it was made for you.
Vega, what do you think?
Specifically about the zombie babies. would you love it if it was your child?
If I'm having a kid in that world, might as well put me down on the spot. Like, I know you didn't grow up on this kind of farm. Prairie grass isn't
That's correct.
Cattle, but that little metal thing that you like, just like
The branding?
no. Like when I think it's when an animal
when
is
you
hanging.
kill a cow?
Yeah,
Yeah, instantly kills a cow
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
way
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not. It doesn't see it coming, so it's not afraid. But it's instant.
yeah. It's not like a gun.
Yeah.
It's just like a metal like kind of thing.
Yeah, on our farm we just used a bat, but yeah, I know what you mean.
That I need. If I even thought about having a kid in that universe,
Just instant liquidize your brain.
bingo.
Fun thing is, Nathaniel's farm, they didn't even sell cows. They just had them to beat them.
Yeah, no. But yeah, well, the thing was we would sell like tickets for people to get their anger out, and they would beat cows. We wouldn't sell the cows. It was more like an experience, like a carnival, and we would beat the cows. Don't look it up. Don't fact check that. I might go to jail.
Actually, you know what? I think what he is doing at that farm is atrocious and inhumane, and I think you should tell more people about this. If you want to be a voice for the voiceless, a voice for the cows and animals that get beaten brutally on Nathaniel's farm, I suggest you tell them to look up beating meat, Nathaniel beating meat.
Yeah.
And then that'll.
And if you do that, then you should also email us at the Holy Moment Podcast. Send those pictures to Jeffrey specifically and say, look at these atrocious things Nathaniel's doing on his farm. Nathaniel's beating this meat of the yeah. The real point is to engage with us at the Holy Moment Podcast at gmail.com or our Instagram. But the joke here is I grew up in Iowa. I grew up on a farm. We don't beat cows. We don't even have them. We did kill chickens though, but that has nothing to do with this movie. I don't think. Did any chickens die in this movie?
The blast radius is pretty wide. I have to imagine some chickens died.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, it has everything to do with this movie then. Good point, Jeffrey.
Yeah, okay. So, we've talked about the visuals. We've talked about the characters. Are there any themes that stood out to y'all? I noticed some about just the dangers of unchecked progress and science without ethical restraint.
I think my favorite theme, and I'll tread lightly just because it goes into my holy moment a bit, but did I write it down? There was a quote by the general or the colonel or whatever the frick his name was that I really, really loved. And I'm going to read it here for you guys in 2 seconds. Okay. This is the colonel talking. You're all the same. These people, you build up all this garbage, then when you're done, you cling to it like it's precious. And the city, it's a festering wound filled with maggots, all squirming around, feeding off each other, giving into their impulses. I really liked that part of the movie, and it really made me like the Colonel's character more, because even though it sounds very harsh, because in the scene he's kind of, I think he's pissed off at the politicians, and he's talking about the city, and it sounds harsh. It sounds like almost like what an evil person would say. But with the context of that scene specifically, it was much more this idea of him like deeply saddened by the state of the city, and specifically, if it was any other bad guy or like colonel, again, like I talked about earlier, like a stereotypical power-driven guy, he wouldn't have used the word wounded. He would have just been like, look at this festering piece of garbage. All these people are bad, blah, 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 blah. But I really like, just by adding the word wounded, made this so much more impactful and made it a theme for me, Jeffrey, was the theme of people being hurt and then people being so inconsolable that they have to resort to basically hedonistic and animalistic desire to numb the pain. I don't want to like make that. I don't want to like, I feel like it's so often that people watch a movie and like connect it back to the war, connect it back. War is bad, blah, blah, blah. War is bad. But I really do feel like this movie was heavily impacted by World War II and the dropping of the bombs in Japan, and the idea that these people were so deeply impacted as a generation, like on a societal level that lasted for generations. And I'm curious, I've never been to Japan, I don't know a lot about it, but I'm curious if it was this idea. Maybe it didn't lead to Japanese cities being infested with like crime. Maybe it did. I don't know. But I definitely could see it. Maybe this idea of like it wounded the people's pride. It wounded the people's ability to rally together, and it made them feel diminished and alone. And I like this idea of once you're wounded bad enough, all you really want to do and know how to do is protect yourself by kind of going back to this animalistic state of doing anything that feels good and gives your brain dopamine. And I think that, and I'll just leave it at that because that's going into the holy moment territory. But I feel like that theme for the city, and then specifically for like Akira and for Tetsuo, was really powerful and a very interesting perspective of like, it's not necessarily the cities and people's faults. The world did them wrong through this war, and now we as the politics have failed them, and we need to help them. It was almost just like a father looking at a disappointed child and being like, it's not your fault that you suck. Someone cut off your leg, and then we as your parents didn't help you or put you in a wheelchair. We let you on the ground crawling around. Sorry, it's a very visceral imagery, but you get the point. So that was a really cool theme that I liked.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense because he is acknowledging, yeah, this city is a cesspool, but he's also saying it wasn't always that way. It became this way. And despite it being what it is, despite what it has become, which is something so awful, that doesn't mean that it doesn't deserve saving. That doesn't mean it doesn't deserve looking after. And so he has this attitude towards the whole city. It's interesting. Tetsuo is both a microcosm and a macrocosm of that problem. A microcosm in the sense that he is just yet another member of this city, yet another citizen that is hurt. And a macrocosm because of what he becomes, this thing that becomes cosmic in scope.
That's a really good way of putting it, that he is this macrocosm of this theme. I like that.
Kaneda, I should say. At first, he is expressing this idea of, hey, like, if anyone's going to kill our friend, it's going to be me. But as the story progresses and as he gets closer to Tetsuo, and as Tetsuo starts transforming into this thing against his will, the goal changes. It seems it shifts from neutralizing the threat to saving his friend Tetsuo, right? He's not fighting him. Now he's yelling out like, Tetsuo, in concern. And so, yeah, like the Colonel's relationship with the city and Kaneda's relationship with Tetsuo mirror each other in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Speaking of that kind of fight scene, I need to know, Jeffrey, watching it in the sub, do they scream each other's names as much as they do in the dub?
Yeah.
It was hilarious. I mean, I think we'd be remiss not to talk about how much this movie inspired not only anime, but just film in general. Whether we like the story or not, it is inspired so much visuals and kind of story components. You want to know what I wonder if it inspired? You know the meme from Naruto and Sasuke where they're just, Naruto! Sasuke! I wonder if it inspired that, because throughout the whole fight scene, they're just like yelling each other's name every 30 seconds. It's just like, Kaneda! Tetsuo! Just like back and forth, back and forth. And I thought that was so funny. I just couldn't help but hear them screaming Naruto and Sasuke.
Yeah, it very well could have been influenced by that. I also wonder if that's just kind of a part of Japanese culture.
Just screaming each other's names.
Screaming each other's names. Maybe it means, I don't know. It's weird to say it means more in Japanese culture than it does in Western countries, like just a name.
No, I mean, I think it makes sense that different cultures' names have different significance. I don't know about screaming them, but
yeah,
just like the reverence people carry behind names, I think is different, like in different cultures.
Yeah, like I know in Japanese culture, you don't refer to someone by their given name unless you're like really close with them.
But I really liked, just speaking about kind of that end fight, probably one of the highlights of the film, story-wise, was the dynamic, even though it was a bit confusing at times, but the dynamic between Kaneda and Tetsuo was really fascinating. And a little bit of spoilers for a movie we're going to review in the future on Vegas Pick, but I think both of you have seen this movie. Did the dynamic between Tetsuo and Kaneda, like buddies, one of them gets powers, kind of goes crazy, he needs to stop him, but he's sad to have to stop him. Ring any bells? Does this like remind you of Chronicles at all?
I love how you don't say, and I say this with every single ounce of love in my heart, like the actual title of something. So Chronicle, yes.
Oh,
This is
you know
that.
what's
What were we gonna say? Sorry.
you know what's oh no, you know what's funny about that? I didn't know this about myself until I started dating my now fiance. Apparently, I add S's and not add S's to certain things a lot. Like apparently, Squid Games, the TV show, is just Squid Game, but I always want to add an S to it. She always points it out, and I do it with like a ton of stuff.
I think you and Bella Thorne, I think if it's the girl from Shake It Up on Disney Channel, have one thing in common, which is probable dyslexia.
That's hilarious. I literally was going to say, is it? Well, I mean, there's no probable. I am dyslexic, very much so.
Is this a canon?
Yes, my mother is she runs a educational center and they specialize in dyslexia, and so yeah, I am very much a
That's
dyslexic
you.
child. That's me. Is that an S? Is that an L? I don't know. I'm stupid.
That's you. No, but yeah, no, that is. If there was, yeah, I guess it didn't even click. That like I guess on subconscious level clicked on any active thing to ever bring up. Yeah, if whenever you guys are ready to watch the best movie ever, then whatever divine forces that will need to come into place will guide Jeffrey's hand to pick that movie out of the hat, because it will be the best movie maybe ever that was for a short time free on YouTube. I don't know where it is now. I have it on I just have it on. I bought it on iTunes when I was like a kid.
High talks for when Akira is free on YouTube.
But like Akira is free on YouTube, just posted by some guy. That was the one-eye movie. The movie I'm talking about, the big C, the big CHRONI, the big C. That was made free by YouTube themselves. Like the buy or rent, free with ads.
That is very convenient. I started watching the dub shortly before we started recording. I didn't get through the whole movie, but I just figured, hey, this would be a good thing to have on the background. I'll chew on things a little more, maybe write some more notes. But do you have any thoughts on the theme, Vega, before we move on to perhaps holy moments?
For the audio only listeners, I'm hitting him with a hard nah.
All right. That's fair. Well, okay, before we move on to holy moments, any further things that we would like to touch on?
I guess just like final random things. To Jeffrey's note, however much I didn't get it aside, this film has influenced a ton of people, which is really cool. I think it is a very well-regarded movie, as at least in terms of like influence in pop culture and such. So like, let that not go without saying. Some elements of some things that have inspired the kind of infamous to some degree Kanye West. That guy saw this movie and he said, "This eats. This is good. This is something I'm gonna base some things of my style off of, because it's kind of baller. It's kind of really interesting." And I have to be, and I'm him. I'm literally him. That's essentially it.
I'm happy you said that because that was something I wanted to bring up. I think we would be foolish if we didn't speak about regardless of what you think about the movie. It absolutely kind of like how we gave an example a while back about Citizen Kane and the best movie ever to exist. Go back and watch Citizen Kane. Not that great, but it absolutely was groundbreaking for the time and has inspired basically every movie since then. Same thing about Akira. I think Akira holds up a lot better than Citizen Kane, but I think a lot of people are like, oh, it inspired anime. It only matters if you're a weeb. I mean, true. It inspired things like Ghost in the Shell, Evangelion, Elfen Lied, but it like Vega was saying, it inspired so much. Like yeah, you people that are watching us right now, that thinks anime is lame, it has definitely inspired something you either played in a video game like Cyberpunk 2077 or Final Fantasy or Metal Gear or any like music like Michael Jackson, Kanye West, and then a bunch of TV. Stranger Things? You guys like Stranger Things? You guys think Stranger Things is the best thing to ever exist? Heavily inspired by Akira. The Matrix, Inception. So, all to be said, it's really impressive when you have a movie that just inspired some of the best filmmakers, period. Like it's one thing when, you know, your work like inspires one or two, but like when almost every single director, writer, producer, cinematographer worth their salt has been inspired by your stuff, you know you did something right.
Yeah, and even if we were to just limit its influence to that of like animation, it not only affected Japanese animation, but it completely reframed how animation was viewed in the West and what animation was capable of and the kinds of stories that could be told with the medium. Because prior to that, like this movie was a big success in the US. Prior to that, anime specifically, Japanese animation, didn't have a huge market here. And animation itself is viewed as more of a kiddie thing exclusively, right? And so people were limited in their conceptions of what was possible. And this broadened horizons a lot.
Yeah, so for all you Demon Slayer lovers and Boku no Pico sucker offers, you can thank Akira for that existing. I like both those anime, by the way. Not making fun of y'all.
Well, now we're going to go on to the holy moment, where we pick a moment, a scene, a character, a performance, any number of things that in particular were impressed upon our minds as being significant and good and positive. That's what the holy moment is in this context. It doesn't have to be, it's not explicitly religious. It's just this art spoke to me on a very special level when it did this. So like what is everyone's holy moment? Starting with Nathaniel, because I know you have more thoughts.
I do have thoughts. All right, I'll get real with y'all for a second. You ever been sick? You ever like poop your brains out and throw up and want to be dead sick?
I know about that.
You know about that, Vega. I know you know about that. This movie, I don't know why, but the scenes that hit me the hardest were the scenes where we see Tetsuo succumbing to the experiments the government did on him. Like he kind of is like has this connection with Akira, which is a big mystery of the film. But basically, we find out Akira is originally a kid who also was given or like was tested upon and like awakened these amazing gifts. The reason I laughed, you guys know the movie Lucy?
No.
It's not it's not a great movie. I think it's some white female actress, Jennifer Aniston or something. I can't remember off the top of my head. But the idea is like she gets this drug inside of her and she slowly is unlocking 100% of her brain. And she starts with like 5% and then 20 and then 30 and then 50. And then by the time she gets 100%, she turns into a USB drive. It's hilarious. But the point is, Akira is kind of like that. He unlocked these psychic powers and then he slowly just like unlocked his ability to be one with the universe. Vaguely, kind of. I don't really get all of it. But the point is, Tetsuo is experimented on, and now he has his connection to Akira, who is dead, kind of, but isn't really dead because he basically became a god. And he's going insane. Like, the power is driving him to insanity. And those scenes where he is just strucken and writhing in pain because of his sickness just weirdly got under my skin because it felt so genuine. I have two scenes in particular, and then I'm going to wrap it back around to maybe a bigger holy moment theme for me. But just specifically, it was the scene where Tetsuo escaped the facility that the government held him in. He went and found, I guess, his kind of street girlfriend. It was like, let's get out of here. And then he steals Kaneda's bike. And as they're running away, they get stopped by the clown gang, which is just a funny name for a gang. And they're beating the crap out of him and, beating up his girl. And then Kaneda shows up and they beat up the crap out of the clowns. But Tetsuo starts kind of like going insane. He's like kicking the crap out of this clown guy, almost killing him. And then he starts profusely sweating. He falls to the ground. He's like clawing at his chest. And all of us, like, we get these really quick snapshot visions. I don't want to say about visions, but just these really unsettling imageries of flesh gurgling out of him, a monster coming out. And there's just this one particular shot where he's like on his hands and knees, like heaving, dry heaving. And he looks down and all of his guts fall onto the concrete. And then in a split second, he looks back and they're all there. I'm not going to say I've been in that much pain before in my life or been that sick where I deliriously thought my guts were filling out of my body. But there's just something so real to like when you have a fever and just everything's spinning and you feel horrible and you want to die. It just purposely encapsulated that. Now, Jeffrey honestly kind of said my holy moment earlier, and that's how I'm going to wrap all of this. Like, what his holy moment is that Tetsuo got sick. Okay, but my big overarching holy moment is the idea of Tetsuo slipping into madness over the course of the movie, and I feel like him slipping into madness is this kind of representation of the greed for power and just control and giving into that animalistic and hedonistic desire I talked about earlier in the movie, kind of his slow mental decline, giving into kind of Tetsuo's whole character arc was like he had this chip on his shoulder of like, man, I was bullied as a kid, so everyone hates me, which I don't really, that's a discussion we get into differently, just Tetsuo's character, but just he had this chip on his shoulder of being like, yeah, everyone's going to hate me. I'm small, I'm ugly, this sucks. And I feel like as he got more sick, or like as the powers kind of kept developing, he went more insane, he really leaned into that. He's like, everyone's out to get me. My best friends hate me. My best friends think I'm stupid. And the chip on his shoulder grew and grew and grew. And so I think this idea of him getting more and more power, but slipping more into madness and giving in more into his insecurities, I think really physically represented the city and the country's wound, this festering wound. Tetsuo's wound is this idea of that he was bullied and mistreated. He has this chip on his shoulder. And as he got more power, it only became more evident of this festering wound inside of him. So that kind of connects back to like the scenes of him being really sick. And so my holy moment is overall this physical representation of this festering wound in this city and in this country, represented the singularity by Tetsuo's decline into madness.
No, that's a great holy moment there. And I think it also speaks to the ways in which certain like actors in society can poke at the underlying insecurities of a population and foster something small into something big, turn a scratch into a gaping like wound by playing for people's insecurities. Like Tetsuo, he had these insecurities, but if he had never been taken in by the government and experimented on, it never would have gotten as far as it did. And so, these bad actors, the government in this instance, have a large amount of blame in making him who he is. Not to deny his own agency, but I mean, he was literally going insane. And so that's also that's an interesting angle on it that I just thought of when I was listening to your holy moment. What about you, Vega? Do you have what's your holy moment? And it can be something as mundane as the art, or, I mean, art is never mundane, but.
Yeah, to all those artists that drew 160,000 frames, lame, says Jeffrey.
Well, that was a Herculean task.
Herculean is a big word, but no, it's not. Sorry, hopefully no one I know hears that and thinks I'm just like completely inept. I promise I'm not. It's a long day. But I think I might just need to circle back. I mean, I'm going to give an answer, but I think I might just need to circle back. So hopefully we just have to commit to do the Holy Moment podcast. This whole thing, what we're doing forever, so we can circle back so I can give better thoughts on Akira. But the vague things that kind of like, this is kind of interesting, but I don't really know if this is what it's communicating. And I just hadn't gotten in the nitty gritty and YouTubed it and maybe cracked open a book or two, or rewatched it again. But this just vague, maybe vague isn't even the term, but this just thing of, so this is maybe going to be my least articulated holy moment, but something that I found really fascinating that I don't know if a lot of movies even strive to get it right, as much as just strive to do anything like it at all, or if it's just something that just naturally happens by just about accident, or maybe it's just like a going out into the field with a metal rod. Maybe you'll get struck by lightning. Maybe you won't. There's not a guarantee. Sorry, all scientists who are definitely listening to this podcast if that's just completely not how it works. But I think all of that surrounding. I thought there was something like maybe not unique in it. It's never been done before, right? But unique in a like how I felt personally watching this movie about this like sort of feeling of how the main character and how a large amount of the story feels like this revolves around this power / borderline. The only reason I say borderline is because I just watched the kind of, I guess, crappy English version on. And sorry if you were any of the people who voice acted it or translated it on YouTube. But I don't know if that necessarily speaks to what the original film was intended to do. This thing of like divinity almost. What does that mean? That will be for another Vega to explain, not this one. I will need to watch this movie maybe again and maybe a second time, or a second time. I might just need to watch it every day for the rest of my life to kind of articulate what I mean by that. But in the very loosest of ways, my holy moment was this film's ability, just all of it together to kind of capture this in animation even too, like this weird kind of funky relationship with this sort of notion of divinity in just a context that I haven't maybe super seen it done in a way that's like I think is so interesting. I don't know. That's all I got. Baton handing off to whoever wants to speak next.
No, that was a fascinating holy moment, and I can't wait to talk to you again when you watch that movie a second time. But, well, for my holy moment, it's an interesting thing. I think there's two things I could say. Thing number one has to do with the sorrow I felt for Tetsuo watching him transform into this power-hungry flesh being against his will. But also, there was that element of complicity, and it was playing off of insecurities he already had. But that is very similar to Nathaniel's. And so instead, what I'll focus on is just the character of the city and the world that they have created. There is a sense in which they just throw us to the wolves, and they introduce us to so much information without explaining all of it as adequately as we might want. But I think it also strangely worked in the movie's favor at points, in that the world already felt lived in, right? Nothing needed explaining as far as like the characters were concerned with each other. Of course, Kaneda wasn't in on the plot or anything, but beyond that, he understood the world that he was living in. And so being just thrown into it, yeah, it felt very lived in. It felt like this city had a history, and the history was reflected in the art. And I've mentioned the scale of the city and how the art plays with perspective too. I would follow so many different stories set in this universe and in that city. If there was an extended universe of Akira films following different people and in different stations of life, but just in that world, I would follow it. And I think just how the art communicated this city was my holy moment.
It's almost like a world I would want an anthology out of.
Yeah.
Like just following different characters doing different things. Some things could relate to the grand scheme of Akira. Some things could totally not relate to Akira. I want to see a little mini short in the world of Akira of the mechanic who worked on Kaneda's bike. Like I would watch something like that because the world is so rich.
Yeah. No, that would be an interesting story. And just like how, not even how Kaneda gets the bike, but just the mechanic making the bike. And
I genuinely was throughout the whole movie, he's just a poor little street orphan. Did he steal it? I mean, I guess probably, but like he also seemed like it didn't seem like something he would steal. He had so much reverence for it. He loved it so much. It
And
doesn't
it said
feel
it
like
was
some,
designed. It was
yeah, like,
custom designed for him.
yeah. So I was really curious like where he got this bike from. But anyways, oh, you know what, Jeffrey? You asked me earlier if I had any other thoughts I wanted to talk about this podcast. I had two very small thoughts. One is for a movie where all of its promotional art is around this bike, and you could like literally go to YouTube and look up Akira motorcycle slide compilations. They're like 20-minute long compilations, and each clip is like 4 seconds long. That is how many times, this like classic slide on the bike transition thing has been done before. So for the fact that it is so pop culture just ingrained everywhere and is so big in the movie's promotional, there is not enough of that bike in that movie. That bike shows up at the beginning of the movie, and then I love when Kaneda was like, I'm gonna go, or like Kay was like, where are you going? Like it's towards like the beginning of the third act, and Tetsuo's going crazy with power and killing everyone, and Kay, the female kind of vague love interest to Kaneda, is like, where are you going? And he's like, I'm bringing him the bike because that's what he wants. And then it promptly gets like not at all like it's not like here's the bike. It just wasn't it just wasn't a story element. So I just thought it was funny. Thought the bike would be more important. Second note, I think this movie deserves an award for giving a character the worst haircut in all of existence. Tetsuo's hair is so bad. He simultaneously has so much hair and is also bald. It's scary to look at. And those are my two thoughts. Thank you.
He has a lot of forehead, if I'm remembering correctly.
So much forehead. Forehead for days.
Oh man, part of me is like, well, that's not the hair's fault, but I mean, you style your hair around your face shape, right?
Mm-hmm. The forehead fetish gang was eating in this movie. Absolutely devouring.
If one of our audience members is a member of that gang, shoot us an email.
And Jeffrey will send you a picture of his forehead, hair pulled back and everything. Whoa, don't, you gotta tease, if you do it now, they're not gonna email us. You gotta tease them.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and give this movie our rating. I'm gonna start Drunken Monk. I'm gonna say Drunken Monk, because man, does this movie do some interesting things visually, and I thoroughly enjoyed watching it, and there was an artfulness to what it was doing. And as far as direction goes, he made a few baffling moves. I never understood where exactly he was going. Never is a harsh word. Sometimes I didn't quite know where he was going, and then he'd just fall into a ditch. This drunken monk. But no, I think he had some drunken thoughts that were very insightful, and I think that is why ultimately I give this a drunken monk.
I wish I had some cool, interesting, thoughtful, provoking to say. I don't. What Jeffrey just said, ditto. Every single word of it. When someone's drunk and they just somehow do something amazing and you're like, holy crap, and then the next minute they poop their pants. That was this movie. That's all.
I think this movie for me goes beyond any of the any confines of understanding that we've ever had. And by that, I mean, perhaps this will be the first movie and my co-host can grab a big rock and just attack me with it. They could shoot me with it. This movie feels like gas station stoner in that you may have just been told the most beautiful, most like mind-boggling thing that you've ever heard in your life, but could also be borderline completely incoherent. Like there was an idea, there was a thought, and maybe I just need to get like on it to get what you're saying. So, parentheses. This is, I guess, the closest thing would be Drunken Monk, but I like the idea. I like the idea of a gas station stoner. There might be
gas station stoner.
Well, that's like fun.
It's like not that. Yeah, because being a stoner, being like partaking in that, does not mean you're dumb. Doesn't mean you're stupid, but there are. I'm just speaking towards a specific image of just like some people I may have known in my life who speak as if they have like achieved some sort of like opening of a third eye, but they're just talking about regular experiences while high. So that isn't quite what this movie is. But I still stand. Gas station stoner. The other flip of the coin, the cousin to the drunken monk, I believe.
It's the new age version of Drunken Monk, which I like.
Yeah.
If you need to hold on to a part of our established system, it is essentially the drunken monk. But if you don't, if you're okay with going a little bit off the beaten path, gas station stoner.
All right, wonderful. So I guess, yeah, we all had a similar ranking of this movie, and
Lower than I thought it would be. Akira is one of, again, obviously went in knowing nothing, hadn't seen it before, but one of those movies I've heard so much about and so praised. So I really was thinking we were going to have some, at least some Kirito Adamus, but yeah, I make sense. I think we're all a Drunken Monk, but I am surprised.
yeah. Well, I mean, I definitely see myself watching this movie again, if for nothing else, for the beautiful animation and art. I also thought that the soundtrack was.
Oh, I wanted to bring that up. The soundtrack was so good. It was so unique. I loved the song they played while they were chasing on the motorcycles, and I loved Tetsuo's motif. Anytime it went to him when he was like going crazy with power, it was so cool. Okay, that's all.
Well, at around this time, I would usually take out the hat and pull a movie from it, and that would decide what we were watching next. But we are actually going to be away for a bit for the whole month of December, save for one exception, in which we will watch a Christmas movie. We'll have a Holy Moment Christmas special. How exciting is that, guy?
Ooh, jingle bells. I'm excited.
Woo-woo!
Yeah, we got to take a break, specifically because Vega told me he hates all of you. So do with that what you would like, audience.
Yeah, what movie are we watching? We don't know yet. You're going to find out with us. Well, no, you're not. We're going to find out before you do, and then we're going to watch that movie, and then we're going to talk about it, and then you'll find out. But as of right now, do we know?
Maybe.
No. Maybe. Who's to say?
Not
Who's
me.
to say?
Just to be specific on the dates, yes, we will be taking off this episode, which we're recording right now. Akira will release on the first Monday of December. We will then miss the next 2 Mondays of December. We will release our Christmas special the Monday of Christmas week, and then we will miss the last week of December. So all in all, we're missing 3 weeks of December, and we will be back January, the first Monday of January, which is like the 5th or 6th, something like that. But look forward to the special Christmas episode because there might be some extra special things happening in it, but we'll see.
Also, we've got our first instance of mail, fan mail.
Aw, if it was copyright legal, it would be fun to play like "You just got a letter, you just got a letter." Is that not Scooby-Doo? Blue's Clues. Yeah.
Yeah.
Aw.
So we should come up with a ditty of our own. That would be fun.
Yeah, that's it. Me singing bad Blue's Clues recovers.
This is the whole.
All right, let's see what our first
This is the
email
holy
is.
moment. Somebody send us
This
an email.
is an email from our good friend Alex. He says, "Dear Holy Moment Podcast, I love listening to your podcast every Monday morning. It brings joy to my week, listening to 3 friends talk about movies together and laughing." Ah, thank you. We enjoy talking movies together and laughing as well. Oh, the joy, you say. You asked in your last episode for listeners to tell you who we would like to talk to for a couple of hours if we had the chance. I would love to talk to Jeffrey. Well, I'm flattered. Let's see. I would ask him questions like, what is your favorite fruit? Pomegranate. And what type of car do you drive? 2008 Toyota Yaris, and it's the most annoying thing. A quick sidebar from your email, Alex. So if you've never been inside a 2008 Toyota Yaris, all the dash information, the dash is in the middle of the car, which it takes some getting used to, not the worst thing. Here's where the issue comes in. Is I've got these air vents, right? Right in front of the air vents, that's where the cup holders are. And so let's say I have a cold drink, right? But I want to blast hot air. What's it going to do?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to melt my ice. It's going to make my drink nice and lukewarm. Now, let's reverse this situation here. Let's say I have a hot drink, but I want to blast cold air. What's it going to do?
I don't know again.
What's going to make my drink nice and lukewarm? It's a real hassle, a real struggle. Anyway, back to you, Alex. I might even ask him questions like, why are you a misogynist? Or do you own part of a casino because you are part Cherokee? Excuse me, Choctaw, good sir. Choctaw. And as for the misogyny bit, yeah, that's just a running joke. I'm kind of the farthest guy from a misogynist, and I know that's what a misogynist would say, but
I can't wait to use AI to recreate Jeffrey's voice to say, I am a misogynist. That's me, Jeffrey Nichols.
that is never something I would claim. And trust me when I say, women, you deserve rights.
What a good take, Jeffrey.
Also, I have a few random questions. Why do Vega and Nathaniel look the same? Oh, wow. That's, is Vega the one with the glasses? If you could address these questions in your next episode, that would be much appreciated. In God we trust, your number one fan. Well, Alex, to your question, Vega is the one with the glasses.
Oh, wait.
And
For those of you watching the YouTube version, I just put on glasses. And now this
whoa.
number one fan will never be able to tell who is Vega and who is Nathaniel.
Listen, we've run into a problem, Alex. I don't know the difference either now. So I'm just going to have to leave your question unanswered. I'm sorry. But thank you for sending an email. And to all of you in our audience, we encourage you to be like Alex and send in a question, a comment. It can be fun. It can be silly like this. But it can also be just serious thoughts on this movie that we've just watched together. Like, well, what are your thoughts on Akira? What did it make you feel? What are your thoughts on 2D animation versus live action and the capabilities of mediums? A lot of cool stuff to think about, and we want to hear your thoughts.
Send us your favorite hentai.
Yeah, send us your favorite hentai, uncensored preferably. Anyway, with that, I'm going to say good night and merry, jolly, early Christmas. Ka-chow.